tuning into IoT Connect, where we're covering some of the most interesting topics, trends, and news around the Internet of Things. IoT Connect is brought to you by TEAL, a wholly owned, patented eSIM platform that connects any IoT device to any network around the world. Now, I'm excited to welcome you all to this episode of IoT Connect. If you're like us and you're passionate about IoT, be sure to click that like button below and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a beat. Today, I'm excited to welcome Hermann Frank to the show. Hermann is the co-founder and CEO of Gigs, the Stripe for phone plans, enabling platforms to sell phone and data subscriptions to their users. Hermann, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
So Hermann, I thought we'd start off and I think it would be really interesting to learn a little bit more about Gigs and telecom-as-a-service, how the Gigs platform works, and what the process looks like for launching a branded wireless service on the Gigs platform.
Gigs enables technology companies to sell phone plans, data plans to their customers, and to do so globally. It's an operating system which combines wholesale connectivity, what we typically know as like OSS, BSS, MVNE capabilities, customer support, payments, carrier of record. So the full stack end to end, from you procuring connectivity to cash in the bank, fully abstracted in way into a single API for any network globally, and a set of tools built on top of that that enable you to embed a phone plan, program it, and optimize it for your UI, your use case, your user base that you have. That's what Gigs does and how it works. And the process before if you wanted to start an MVNO, it was quite convoluted. You needed to go to an operator, right? You need to find an operator that will talk to you, find your business idea interesting. You need to convince them, there's merit to it. Then you need to go through negotiations, right? Commercials, pricing, a long tail of things that on the network that you can and cannot do, SLAs and so on. So this whole process takes 9 to 12 months typically if you want a serious wholesale contract with an operator. Once you've done that, now you have a price for connectivity that you're not able to sell. So you need to go out and procure 5 to 6 on average is what we're seeing from our customers. Different platforms that you need to tape together to be able to sell your first subscription. That typically, right, entails all the services that I named before, right? Like the OSS, BSS, MVNE. You need UIs for your customers. You need UIs for your customer support. You need to find a payments provider. You need to embed a text engine. In the US, you have 16,000 text restrictions that have about 10 plus items for connectivity each, and they're changing constantly. So you cannot even hard code it. You need something to be able to remit taxes, collect taxes, remit taxes in all states. And then you need to become a carrier of record in all states. And most companies we at least work with, they're technology businesses. They have a core business. They're not MVNOs. So they have no desire, and in some cases, like our neobanking customers, they don't even want or should avoid being in a second regulated industry. Like being in banking is hard enough. Imagine you have now the other very regulated industry. So we kind of abstract all of that away, which was previously a 18-month end-to-end process, and a team of 20, 30 people you would have to build around such an endeavor into an API key and a few tools that you can use.
So give us some thoughts as to why you touched on this, but why tech companies are becoming more bullish on launching their own MVNO.
I think there's a lot of pent-up need for that, because you have the connectivity is something we all need, we all use. Like you have private phone lines, you have corporate phone lines, But the technology world and the telecom world just like had no layer that allows them to communicate and operate together efficiently. And Gigs has created this for the first time. You can have like now a programmable MVNO that you can just plug into whatever use case you have, being it HR, banking, right, travel, devices, and you can set it up the way you need it and the way it works best with your software stack and within your user interface. So we're seeing a lot of this pent-up demand just like starting to come to market because it's possible for the first time. And I think if this layer existed 10 years ago, for us right now, like today, it would be the most normal thing in the world for us to just buy a phone plan through your bank, like through a bank, through a challenger bank, or press a button inside of Airbnb to provision a travel sim whenever you're arriving somewhere, or do so in the Uber app. But you know, we'll be there in 10 years.
I wanted to jump a little bit into your background because you've had a very entrepreneurial career. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you ended up founding Gigs?
Sure. So I basically went into entrepreneurship right out of college. I founded my first company. Um, and a bit over 10 years ago now. And back then we were building software for retail, making it easy for any a retail store to sell online, have a point of sale and an inventory management system, all in one go. I'd say the closest thing today is the Shopify POS, for example, for offline retail. And back then it was the holy grail of digitalizing offline inventory and like bringing it online in a structured and meaningful manner. And we did that for a couple of years. And at some point, I wanted to start a second company, and I didn't have a specific idea that time around. I just knew from everything I've learned that if I'm going to do something, I want to be in an industry for 15 plus years. I want to learn if like the first thing doesn't pan out, be able to kind of not have to start over, but kind of to progress in the same industry. And I looked at a bunch of industries that I thought are not digitalized yet, that have not seen the same progression and kind of the same reinvention that everything from music to banking to payments has seen in a decade and decade and a half before. And among only a few remaining industries, telecom kind of stood out. It's this massive industry that was super hot in the 90s, right? It was tech before tech was tech, right? It kind of minted the most companies and millionaires and billionaires, right? And only tech has, I think, brought more to light. Then 2 decades, nothing happened, and like everything kind of stagnated, and you had like decades of bad decision making in software. So we figured there must be a big problem still to solve there that you can solve with good software and good UX, because this is what we knew what to do. We come from software. We have an ecosystem, and we just didn't see great software teams tackling telco. And we knew venture capital doesn't like it anymore. So okay, there's probably enough to do. So we kind of endeavored on this journey to find one big reoccurring problem that we can solve. And we kind of stumbled into what Gigs became by experiencing the need to sell eSIMs ourselves. And the only way we could do it back then was we bought QR codes of an online store, and then we put it in a Stripe checkout and served it through an Excel sheet. And that kind of, looked like something that is, automatic and digital, but at the end of the day, it was quite the mechanical Turk and behind it. And obviously it started breaking, right? It didn't scale. We started running out of those QR codes. Like obviously you couldn't manipulate the plan. Like if you needed an extension, like you couldn't. It just was like one fixed amount of data for one fixed amount of time, if it worked. And so we saw a need for an API-based solution, and it kind of existed in IoT, but like as you guys know, right, IoT is the commodity you can procure relatively easily, right? Like there's a lot of people will sell you IoT data, and will sell you SIM cards, and they're not governed by the networks that much, right? Because you don't buy access to AT&T on an IoT SIM through AT&T, right? You buy it from someone else. So we needed real phone plans, right? Phone numbers. And we saw no one is doing that. Like no one is able to offer you kind of an API first embeddable, programmable phone plan. And we were very familiar with Stripe and Adyen, and Plaid was quite getting quite a lot of attention at that time. And we were like, something like this needs to exist in telecom. Like you can put a payment button everywhere, right? Like you can just build a thing and have someone pay for it, right? And like Stripe makes it super easy for you. You don't need to be a finance expert. You don't need to be a banking expert. You don't need a team of experts, right? You just get an API key and you're ready to go. And that's how Gigs got started.
Wow, that's amazing that you found that gap in a massive industry like telecom. Just so our listeners have a better understanding of the massive problems that you're solving, can you talk about some of the challenges that companies, like banks, for instance, would face if they wanted to launch their own wireless service, and how Gigs helps companies overcome those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, you go about it like, how would a technology company decide to work with anyone, right? Being a hosting provider or payments provider, like an email service, right? Like it needs to be super easily super easy to integrate, right? Like you need to have super well documented APIs. You need to have the right processes in your team, right? Like someone should be able to get in touch with you and do a deal with you in a matter of a day, right? Like or a couple of days, not in a matter of a year. Then you need to build a lot of tooling because what software industries have been really great at is just building a lot of tooling on top of the pure commodity, on top of the pure service, to make it easy for whoever wants to work with you, not having to build a lot of stuff and find out a lot of stuff from scratch. So then you kind of understand what you need to build, and that's kind of how we approach the whole thing. So for a neobank, right, if they decide, okay, we want to do our own branded phone plan and it has to live in our app, right, and it can just push a button and install the SIM, that's where the journey starts for them. It's about how does the product look like and how do I get this into my interface. So they get in touch with us and they talk about us, about the plans and how like what the customer base looks like, what are they trying to position in the market. We obviously have a lot of experience talking to a lot of players and powering a lot of these solutions. So we kind of create something with them. We price them, the plan in the same way you would get it from an operator, but without the $100 million commitment behind it that a bank just wouldn't do, right? Like if you're a fintech, you're not going to go and do a $100 million commitment. That's kind of antithetical of how software works in general, how software companies work. You want low exposure, minimal integration time, and you want you don't want to have anything to do with the complexity of whatever it is you're integrating. And then we give them the API keys and we start on a journey of embedding it with them. And we have teams for every step of the way, from branding to positioning, and solutions engineering. So we have engineers sitting with our customers' engineers and just guiding them through it. So it's as painless as possible. And you have as many of the learnings that we have that we can convey to our customers, because traditionally, if you want to go about it, you need to spend a year talking to the operator about what kind of deal and what kind of pricing and all of that. You need to give them the $100 million commitment. And then the journey begins, right? You need to find 6, 7 different tools, from OSS, BSS, MVNE, payments, UI, customer support, mailing service, and so on. So you need to spend another 6 months, 12 months, depending on like what your standard of quality is for what's great. And so you'll have spent 1.5 years building without selling a single subscription. And if it just doesn't work, if your audience doesn't react to it, you're on the hook for 100 million. You've just spent 18 months. You probably hired 30 people on the way. What are you going to do now, right? So we try to take all of this pain out of our customers.
Wow, those are some massive challenges that you're helping businesses overcome, especially in such a regulated industry like telecom. So that's wonderful. You mentioned Nubank, and I know this is an exciting new partnership. Can you talk a little bit more about the partnership with Nubank and what you guys are helping them with today?
Sure. I mean, as you've read, like we launched travel eSIM with them to a growing number of their subscribers. They have 100 million subscribers in total, 100 million users on the platform, and it's I think one of the most respected and exciting fintechs in the world, right? They have next to the over 100 million users, I think this is the most profitable, kind of well-run fintech out there. And so seeing them choose gigs and work with us on their ambitions in the mobile market is a huge honor. We've basically enabled what I just mentioned for them in now 137 countries. I think we are powering.
That's a great example of how you guys are helping businesses that want to launch their own branded wireless service. We talk about fintech, but what are some other types of companies or industries that would want to take advantage or are taking advantage of gigs today?
So we're seeing a lot of excitement around the HR space. So everything people tech related, HR platforms, MDM platforms, where you provision phone plans for employees, like at home and abroad, and whenever they're traveling. A lot of companies have employees in like 10, 20, 30 countries. So they're managing all of these relationships with telecoms in each individual market. And it's a lot of overhead, right? And it's probably next to the cost it causes next outside of the phone plan to just keep that all alive, right? It's kind of a broken system, and it's probably not optimal on cost either, because you're not gonna go and like see my only most optimal plan in like the 15th country we're operating in. You're happy you don't have to touch it. You're locked into contracts, right? Like that are usually longer than the average tenure of an employee these days. So we help abstract that all away in like one relationship that you can plug into any interface. Basically through your HR tool are able to automatically provision a phone plan to an employee that joins a company, and cancel the phone plan with an API ping whenever the employee leaves. right? Just because their file goes from active to, inactive, and there's basically zero human overhead required in just managing connectivity needs in any market or any needs. You have companies that have different kinds of needs of connectivity, from like phone plans for HR to iPads that might be in like restaurants or hotels or whatever, depending on the business, right? Like think ride sharing, where you have drivers, you have iPads for ordering, right? And then you have HR staff, and then you have this in 10, 20, 30 markets. That gets an increasingly complex puzzle to keep an eye on.
That's interesting. So, from fintech to HR, you mentioned iPads. What can you give us a sense of what the future looks like for some of these other devices like watches, wearables, these sorts of things?
So we definitely see that the most optimal user experience is you unpack your device, you activate, and you provision connectivity for this particular device in that moment. In the same way you just connect to your local Wi-Fi whenever you unpack whatever it is, right? So I think the sign up to a network experience should be just that, and you just like have either already credentials that you can put in and basically transfer your phone plan to that device, or you can create a new line for that device if this is something you haven't had before. And it should be a click of a button, like pay with Apple Pay is basically connect me to AT&T or connect me to my previous account that I have somewhere.
It's really exciting. I think what you're doing is really, really cool. Herman, if our listeners want to learn more about gigs, where can they find you online?
It's gigs.com, gigs.com, and we have a lot of interesting pages, and all the use cases we've discussed today are explained there in great detail.
Well, there you have it. Gigs, telecom as a service, for anybody out there in banking space, in HR, if you've got a wearable device, tablet computer, or any tech company really that's looking to launch their own MVNO, definitely check out Gigs. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of IoT Connect. Again, thank you to Herman for being on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to visit with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.